Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And as you know, we talk to business leaders in Asia to share their stories and also to uncover new insights as well. Today, when I saw today's guest, I'm already happy already. And she is one of my inspirations on LinkedIn. I've listened to her TEDx talk and watched a lot of her interviews as well. Today, we have Sha-En Yeo with us. So known as the happiness scientist on LinkedIn. She has experience. She's very prolific, posting a lot of content on LinkedIn, and she's a TEDx speaker, spokesperson as well, master of applied positive psychology from University of Pennsylvania, and I will get into that as well. And also, she's a mental health consultant to mental health startups and also mental health advocate. As I said, she is the happiness scientist, so I feel so happy to bring her here today.
Thanks, Bob, and hi, everyone.
Yeah, so I like to ask all my guests, the first question that I like to ask is, because it's called the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. So the reason I picked that name also is because us Asians, we don't like to show ourselves. We like to be hidden dragons or crouching tigers a lot of times. So that's why this podcast is to uncover them. So
Yes.
my first question is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
I think the first one that comes to my mind is Karate Kid. You know that story? I mean that movie, and I think there's a few versions, but Jackie Chan is always one of my favorite stars. And I think Karate Kid is the one that has the most poignant story of how he groomed, the younger protege, try to be like him. Lots of lessons in that movie. But of course, the action scenes are very shock to watch.
Thank you. That is the first, Shan. That is the first. No one has said Karate Kid yet. So thank you so much.
Really?
Yes, thank you so much. It is very good choice because that movie is a good movie to show the relationship between the master and the student. And that's where a lot of Western people don't understand the dynamics in Asia that we have between a teacher and a student. We have that second level respect one, like we cannot even challenge them or cannot even cross the line sort of respect. So that is a movie that sort of tries to build that relationship. So very good choice. And yeah, the one with Jackie Chan would be the one with Jaden Smith as well, quite a number of years ago. So good choice as well. And yeah, so in preparation for this interview, so just to give the audience a bit of context, so do watch Sha-En's TEDx. It is one of the few TEDx that after listening to it, I want to clap my hands and stand up. So it was a great, very heartfelt, personal story, you name it, everything is in that TEDx talk. And then recently, she also did an interview on 1FM. So I won't be repeating the same question. So with context, please watch those interviews, and also an interview that she did a couple of years ago with Pat, one of my connections here in KL. So prefacing to that, so while watching your interview there, so there is something that Pat mentioned, that there's a general happiness scale. So at Penn State website. So I went to did that assessment. Okay. So it's not a lot of questions. Maybe like six questions. And then I score before this interview, I shared with you, I score 5 out of 7. But I don't know is what to do with that, right? So what does that mean?
I guess like with any skills, it's trying to give you an idea of where you stand. And I think a caution is whenever we do a skill, sometimes we take it very seriously. But skills aren't actually meant to be prescriptive, meaning that they're not supposed to make you go and like make radical changes to your life, but it's really to just give an insight on where you are at that point in your life. And of course, the skills can change. You may be 5 out of 7 now. It could be better next time. It could be different next time because the context of your life changes as well, right? And of course, different skills have different midpoints. It doesn't mean 3.5 means must be the middle, right? So sometimes you see, wow, I pass, 5.7, I passed already. But I think 5.7 is a score that tells me that you're doing well in most areas of your life, right? Like you feel that most areas are going well. And maybe depending on which question you answered, it might fluctuate depending on your context as well.
Thank you, Sha-En. And my next question is, what should I do with that? Like, should I try to be more happy, or should I what should I do with that?
Yeah, so I think that's where we distinguish, like happiness is also very subjective. That means that it's dependent on how we feel, right, at that point in time. So if you feel like, hey, I look back on what I'm doing and I'm happy, I've got good podcasts like you do, I'm good on LinkedIn, I've got good relationships, and generally when I assess my life, hey, it's quite good, then it's okay to stay where you are. It's not always a matter of striving to be better and better. I think maybe in Asia, we're always like pushing on topping our scores. So in happiness index, we want to top our scores. But we must also notice that everything comes with a balance. In striving to top our scores, does that make us more stressed? Right? Some people see it as a pressure point. Then in that case, maybe it's not useful.
Thank you so much. And yeah, not as a pressure point. So let's get into the deep stuff today, right? So I won't ask you the questions. You have been, Sha-En has been a lot of podcasts, so I don't want to ask her the same questions. So I'll go deep into more personal questions as well.
Sure, go
All
ahead.
right. So just get into it. And this is one of the questions I sent her as well previously. And so as a business owner, and a lot of my audience that will watch this will be from LinkedIn, right? Those goal-driven, diligent people on LinkedIn. Expanding their network or growing their business or being a thought leader on LinkedIn. So people on LinkedIn, we are very diligent. And my struggle personally, I've done this podcast in 3 months. I've done a lot of episodes already, and I want to get to 100. That's the type of diligent person I am, right? So, and in your previous interview on 1FM, and I really liked that whole chat. It was so fun. There was a lot of laughter in there, and one of the things you said was contentment. So I struggle with contentment. Like sometimes when I'm in KL, one bustling city that is in Asia, and when I go out of town, I'll look at the paddy fields and say, yeah, maybe contentment is becoming a farmer, like being content. So that's one of the things you say, contentment. So but as a business owner myself, I am actually not very comfortable with contentment. I'm not sure, maybe I've got it wrong. So I relate contentment with complacency. I am afraid if I become content, then I move towards complacency. If I'm happy, if in other words, if I'm happy, maybe I won't work so hard. Is the other way of saying that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I used to think that way as well, and that's because we see things as either or. It's either we are content and happy and don't strive, or we strive, right? So that's why it comes as if it's a conflict, because we look at it as a dichotomy. But I prefer to look at it as an and. We can be content with what we have achieved so far, with the things that are in our life, and be happy with those. And we can continue to strive towards our goals. So what that means is that if we, for example, I've got LinkedIn top voice, I can be very content with that. And I can continue to say, I want to hit my first 10,000 followers. It doesn't conflict with each other. Does that make sense?
It does.
In reality,
Executional-wise,
how do we execute, right?
Yes, that's...
So we have to ask ourselves, why do we want to strive? What are we striving for? And what does striving bring us? Sometimes achievement, right? Because as a result of striving, stimulates the pleasure hormones in our brain. You see, human beings are pleasure-oriented and pain-avoidant. That means that every time we hit a new milestone, pop, we get a dopamine hit. Wow, so shocked. Okay, let's do more. Pop. Then it's almost like a good drug. No real drugs involved, but it's an achievement high. Right? And therefore, when we stay content and we don't strive for our goals, we feel like, nothing moving, shook, why are we still here? And therefore, we tend to construe contentment with no pleasure. And stagnation, in fact, causes us pain because we don't see the progress. So that's a little bit of the science behind it. So how do we therefore implement it? I think one is to ask ourselves, why are we striving? Are we striving because those goals are meaningful to us? Or are we striving to fill up the goal and just to get the pleasure hit? Those are very different intentions, right? The second one is to reframe the idea of contentment. Contentment is being happy with what you have. And that means being able to celebrate the achievements and not downplaying your achievements. Because when you downplay, then you'll say, that's not good enough. I need to do more. That's not good enough. I need to do more. That's not good enough. And that maybe comes from the mindset that whatever we do may not be able to measure up with whoever it is we're comparing to, or whatever expectation that we have given to ourselves. Right? So to summarize, just for everyone listening, is that when we are striving, we want to ask ourselves, what are we striving for? What does it mean to us when we hit our goals? Is it purposeful, intentional, in alignment with who we are? Or is it just striving to hit the pleasure hit? And then when we are contented, can we truly be content? Or is it that we never feel enough? That's why we need to keep striving. And to me, that's how I find the balance.
Well, I love that because it is not just striving, but striving with a purpose, knowing whether there is a deeper meaning to your striving or you're just striving for striving's sake. So for example, if I am working very hard for my business, I need to know why am I doing for, is it for, my family's future, or is it for my personal, goals, or like you need to ask yourself whether it's just for maybe just to seek pleasure. So that is a very important question to ask, and I think it's profound because and in my younger days I would have strived a lot, but not sure where I'm going with that, but I have different periods
I
of my
think we
life
all did lah.
where you strive and you are not sure where it's going, and then you burn out, right? So that's
Yes,
a keyword there.
exactly.
So if you want to strive, you need to know what is your purpose behind it, and then you need to check yourself, are you in the right direction as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
And follow-up question on that. So while watching your very heartfelt speech on TEDx, one of the things that you mentioned, that you were a competitive you were, right, a competitive badminton player, and that's one of the
Yes.
stories you shared. So this is also I say this on the podcast, my selfish question. All right, this is a selfish question. So I am also very competitive until today. Like you said, like you said, I want to grow to 10,000 followers. For me personally, I'm like, oh yeah, that person has 60,000. That person, I want to be there. And I sometimes I take it as that. I take it as that is my personality trait. I'm very competitive. I just want to be the best. Right. So like in your experience in business, and also in your experience as a competitive badminton player, so it ends well as a in your story, like you won for your university, right? So in your it's pretty much a similar question, but in your experience, how do you balance being happiness and also competition?
See, one of the things that leads to overall happiness and well-being, right, is achievement, right? But it's not the only thing. So there are things like positive emotions, how we feel, how good we feel. There's things like engagement, are we using our strengths? There's things like relationships, and there's meaning and purpose that we talked about earlier. So like in competition, right, when we achieve something, of course, we're going to feel good, because when we look back, those achievements means we have worked hard at something and gotten to a certain level. And therefore, that achievement means something. But when we look at a team, like for my badminton or even in my business, I have a team as well. When we achieve something, it comes with all the others. There's positive, good feelings. My team members all use their individual strengths. And in badminton, I was always the person standing at the back playing doubles, not in front. Why? Because I'm not very good in front. In front, you have to be super fast and you have to be whereas my reaction is just a split second slower. So I was actually better at the back. But that's also utilizing strengths. And then how about relationships that you're building with the people along the way? My team member, we had such good chemistry that, sometimes you don't even need to shout who take which ball. We just roll around and we manage to cover each other on the court. And same with my team members. When I'm going through a hard time, they will ask me, Sha-En, do you need any help? It's not just me helping them, but they also want to help me, right? And then, of course, overall seeing that purpose in it. So I think when we think about competition, many of us see only what's on the surface, which is the achievement part of it. But so much goes into that achievement, right? And even though that went well, like the story in the TEDx went well, it was fueled by so many disappointments in other competitions before that. So many times I failed, and I thought, just give it up, give up the sport, I'm done with it. I actually did go through that period. But then I remembered, no achievement is without any effort, right? And therefore, we also look at the progress that we are making. So If we look at the progress, we put the effort, and then we look at in totality, and then the sweet thing comes the outcome. We put it all together, then it makes a more composite picture, right?
My God, that is so gold. Like in competition, like you said, the team relationships that you find, and even sometimes even relationships with your competition as well. If you face
Yes,
the same people,
exactly.
that
Yeah.
will
I mean,
like
the story about Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, that
mm,
when Roger Federer retired, Rafael Nadal was the one crying harder. Why? Because he said he pushed me to my limit. Maybe in the beginning, it began as a very like I look at him, I want to get there, just like you said, right? I want to beat him, I want to beat him because I want to get that satisfaction. But towards the end of their so-called rivalry, it was more like respect. I respect my competitor. I'm inspired by him. So I think one of the things we can look at in terms of competition is not comparison to make yourself feel lousy or envy someone that they have what you don't have, but perhaps look at them as inspiration and say, how can I get there? What are they doing that if I emulate, I can get there as well?
yes, I
Right?
wish I knew that when I was younger. I used to be when I have competition, I'm like, yeah, it's you think you start to blame everything else beside yourself. Like you say,
Yes.
oh, it's favoritism or whatever is what advantage they have in life. But like you said, you look at them and see what is achievable as well in life.
Yeah.
And last question on this part is that the thing I really like that you say is relationships and people
Mm,
nowadays. I think that is a challenge. And you are in Singapore, I'm in Kuala Lumpur. We are in very metropolitan cities, and a lot of people are very lonely in these cities.
mm,
So, like, what are your tips? As because our relationships are very key, and we used to have better relationships. Like families used to live together in a very big house.
yes,
Now
yes.
we live. I
Kampong
live in studios.
style.
Yeah, long houses. I live in the studio. Everyone lives by themselves. So like what is your take on modern relationships? How can we get better relationships in, let's say, in a city like Singapore?
Yeah, I think it's intentional forming of relationships. What I mean by that is, reaching out. And sometimes when we think about reaching out, we think we must reach to 10,000 people. Not necessary. It could be like what we're doing one to one, right? And start with people who may be more similar to you or proximally in a community around you. Like you could perhaps talk to your neighbor, right? Or perhaps you attend an event and you make the connections there. I think we need to build upon the daily routines that we have. Of course, the challenge comes when most of us, because of COVID, were behind the screen and never actually went out to meet people. And then now when things are open up, we find it hard to then go and meet people because we have developed maybe a fear or discomfort, what we call reintegration. And I think when that happens, then maybe it starts with people that you have known before and just reconnect. So you may not want to start with a new person because at least you have some level of familiarity, or maybe you have a shared experience like secondary school or previous workplace. Yeah, so start small. Yes, you might feel discomfort or may fear, but just remember, fear is a protective mechanism that tells you don't do it, don't do it. But it isn't. Sometimes it becomes too large of a voice that we stop doing it.
Thank you, Sha-En. Like you said, it is a very digital world right now. There is pros and cons with it, but with the digital world, I say there are plus sides, there are pros to it as well. Like you could find a badminton club if you like to play badminton, so you could join
Yeah, that's
group
right.
activities. Like I really love music, so I'm part of the music community. So you can join
Ah, so
different
nice.
communities that are your family but not really your family, but at least in the metropolitan city, that is where you can start off with. There's some
Absolutely.
familiarity and commonality, things that you like to do together.
Yes,
um
exactly. That's
so
a
yeah,
good place to start for sure.
yes, you still play badminton, by the way?
I don't play competitively anymore,
Of
but
course.
both my daughters play
Oh,
badminton in school. So yeah, so
oh,
I kind of like join them sometimes.
yeah, in
So it's
Malaysia
a nice feeling.
we are very badminton nation and very competitive when it
Yes,
comes to it.
I think it was like KL that I went to for training when I was 14 or 15. It was like a few days weekend training. Then when I was training, I realized, wow, the standard in Malaysia is super high. Because I was 14, right? Then I got beaten by 8-year-old. And oh no, this is why my coach brought me here so that I can see that I can grow so much more.
For us, everyone wants to be Lee Chong Wei. Lee Chong Wei and Lee Chong Wei Lin Tan is the Roger Federer Nadal in badminton.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah. So that is like our national sport lah. Like we just you baby, you start playing badminton first, not football, nothing else. So and very competitive, even in the smaller in where Lee Chong Wei is from is north of Malaysia. It's like not a major city, it's near Penang, but not a major city. And even you can get like very competitive people there. Yeah, it's so competitive. Like in Malaysia, I have friends who take coaching lessons, even though they are not they take part in local competitions. They take coaching lessons. There are coaching lessons around. It's like crazy. But anyway, I don't really regularly play badminton. So yeah, my next question for you is, because a lot of my audience are on LinkedIn, and this video and podcast will be distributed on LinkedIn as well. So just relating back to my working day. So now I own my own business. When I was working, I was actually a bit depressed. So because I was in a cubicle, right? So I think a lot of people listening, if you are from LinkedIn, you might be working in a cubicle, most likely, right? And unlike entrepreneurs, you have freedom to go and spend time with family. They don't, and why I was depressed was I was in a cubicle and my cubicle was facing a wall. And I always like to go outside and look and take a breath. Even my boss would question me on that, right? So it's that's why I became an entrepreneur. I was like, no, I cannot do this. But I was at that cubicle for 3.5 years. I was there, even though in spite of that, in spite of that, I was still. So how I think about it is, my window to the outside world was my computer. So that's how I think about it, to be happy.
That's a very positive reframing.
Like what is your advice to all the professionals on LinkedIn? Like if they're unhappy, and I imagine a lot of people are unhappy now. There are a lot of, when I work with recruitment companies, a lot of people are looking to change roles and things like that. So what if they are unhappy at their job right now, and most people are, unfortunately, what is your advice to them?
Yeah, I guess first is we got to become aware of the source of the unhappiness, right? Is it because the job fit is not there? Maybe you took the job because you needed the money, and that's perfectly legit. I mean, no judgment on that. But then maybe you've been there for a while and you don't feel that you're making progress. So that could be one reason. Or maybe you are not in a good environment. So I think toxic workplace was also another thing that I talked about on 1FM. If you have a boss who is very controlling, maybe even bullying or abusive, well, it's hard for you to actually feel good, right? So I think we first of all find out the source of the unhappiness. Number two, take action steps to dealing with it. So for example, like what you did, you took a walk in order to try to cope with it. That's what I mean by, but you wouldn't have been able to do that if you didn't realize what was causing the unhappiness, right? I mean, so we got to start with awareness and then action steps. So if it's, let's say, difficult relationships, or maybe there's a conversation that you need to have, but you just haven't gotten around to do it. I know a lot of people who are in that position. Yeah, then maybe it's about finally taking the step to talk through some of these things with the people around you so that you can create that environment. I guess what I'm trying to say is, instead of allowing the environment to control you, we can take charge of managing that environment by taking small tweaks around us. Can I give you an example? Yeah.
Please do so.
In my previous workplace, I found myself spending about 70% of the time, or maybe even higher, in a cubicle, just like what you mentioned. And I'm such an extrovert. I love to meet people. So immediately I just felt like my battery is very flat because I'm always facing the computer, and I was in the government, so there's no such thing as surfing and window to the world like what you had, Bob. Yeah. And more importantly, I was also attending a lot of long, dragging on meetings. And so you're like, sit there and you type, like you feel your life force just getting stuck. And then one day, my boss gave me an opportunity to go and do a bit of training. That was like the first chance, right? And then I went there, and then suddenly I felt all alive. And I was like, wow, what is this feeling I'm having is so unfamiliar. But that was the moment that I knew that being in front of an audience was a natural place for me to be. I like to talk, and people seem to like what I was sharing. So it was a good fit. So that's why we talk about fit. If you're in a place where there's no fit, you're definitely not going to feel aligned, and that's going to feel tough. And then, of course, I realized, hey, I like to interact with people. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, are there other opportunities where I can share things? I will do it outside of my hours. And then my boss said, oh yeah, we got an internal sharing coming. Since you're interested in this positive psychology thing, at the time it was just early interest. Why do you give the talk? Then I said, oh, can okay. So I worked harder on that talk than my actual work because I was so passionate about it. I mean, I still got my stuff done. And then after giving the talk, the feedback was also very good. And that was kind of the start of it. So I think why I'm sharing that story is that sometimes when we feel like we are drained, don't ignore it. I think we need to investigate. We sometimes need to explore what is it which actually brings us uplifted, makes us feel alive. What are some of those things? And maybe slowly try to bring in more of those things into your work. You see, not every one of us has the choice to just quit our job, right? Yeah, but we can, control and create the environment that we are in when we know what drains us and what lifts us up.
Thank you, Sha-En. That is so gold. And yeah, the reason why I stayed at the job for 3 years and a half, because it was a good fit. I was very into marketing and I really enjoyed my role,
Right.
and growing and learning in that role as well. So that's the only reason why I stayed for such a long time. Anyway,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
there are many factors as well. And I think good to hear that there was the start of your speaking career as well. So that is so good to hear it. You find
Yeah.
what you enjoy and then you make a business or career out of it. So
Hey,
that
no more
is
minutes to take anymore.
oh, that's the worst meetings. One of the good things about having doing my own thing right now is the meetings. I tell you, oh my god. Sorry
Yeah.
that you said. I think people on LinkedIn will resonate. The meetings that go on and
Yeah.
and
And then at the end, you're back at square one. Like, why did I spend 4 hours there?
okay. So okay, let's flip it around right now. So there is a lot of my audience on LinkedIn are also people who are in higher positions, right? So in decision
Mm,
making, are in managerial roles or are business owners themselves. So
yes.
as a business leader, or even as when I was leading a team, my biggest challenge was I don't know whether my team is happy or not. Which,
Uh,
because they have to appear happy to you in a way because they want to keep their job, right? So it's not childish, they're unhappy and then their face it's not so direct, or they become unhappy
yeah.
and start to be negative. No, it's sometimes you cannot detect the unhappiness. So as like I and it takes different people. Like I did tell my boss that, hey, I don't like sitting here, I'm in a cubicle and facing a wall, but he said everyone else also can. Anyway, there's a side story, but anyway, but it's not always people are so vocal like me, right? So sometimes they are
Yeah.
unhappy and they keep it to themselves. So as business leaders or as team leaders, what can you do to be empathetic and also be aware of your teams or increase your team's happiness?
Yeah, I think one thing is to have check-ins. Sometimes we do check-ins in a team, but sometimes at the team level, there's no safety, right? Safety means that if I say, will I be judged? If I say, will my boss say this? Or if I say, will my colleagues think I'm very particular that I want this, right? So sometimes check-ins done one-to-one in a structured manner so that for the team leader is manageable and also that the employee has something that they can look forward to. It's probably a better platform to be able to share. So check-ins. But of course, that means that there must be trust between the leader and the employee. And how to create that trust and safety, I think it's being non-judgmental. For example, when the team member comes to you and say, I'm really struggling with this task. If you respond with like, hey, I didn't pay you to struggle, okay? Not that I never ever say anything like that, but some bosses do. Then they are probably not going to bring up any of their unhappiness to you, and they'll only want to show you the best because your response is dismissive and judgmental. But instead, maybe we can respond with like, hey, wow, it sounds like with this task you may not have clarity, or it must be difficult for you to try to do this task when you don't know what direction we're heading, right? So a little bit of acknowledging how they might be feeling. That's step number one. Number two, we can say, you know, what kind of help or resources might you need from me? And then, of course, we want to listen, right? We're given 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen more. But sometimes, as a leader, we might end up talking too much or giving too much direction, which leaves very little space for the team member or employee to talk. So listen more, and listen without a fixed idea of what the answer should be, and just give the employee enough airtime, right? And of course, in the beginning, it's uncomfortable because you're not used to it in your position. But I think checking in, that's right, listening, and then offering help. I think these 3 things would be really helpful for them.
Thanks, Sha-En. I love the point, listening without preconceptions. Like don't assume and don't think, like really learn how to listen to your team. So that is very good advice. And the check-ins are very important. And I think, yeah, the trust part is very, if they don't trust you, they think, oh, if I tell him I'm unhappy, you know, he might not promote me. You know, so there's no trust there. Yeah,
That's right.
so there's no trust there. So everything is fake now when when we talk to the superior. So that trust is very important, and very important to build. So thank you so much. I hope the listeners, especially from those on LinkedIn, they will take this into account. So a lot of my listeners are actual business leaders. So I hope this will really impact them as well. And yeah, so thank you for taking the time. Last question before we go. So also listening to your 1FM interview, I really like one point where you said you meditate. All right. So this is another selfish question. So there's a lot of things that people say you can do for happiness, like journaling, like meditation. I struggle with everything. I tried to meditate. I tried 5 minutes. You know, I tried to listen to YouTube. You can search for meditation, 5 minutes. And then there is guided meditation. They will actually talk you through the meditation. I said, okay, every day I wake up, I need to do that 5 minutes. And then, or before sleep, I need to do that 10 minutes. But then it didn't build into my habit. And because I'm such a goal-driven person, maybe I don't, for me, I don't see the ROI. That's why I didn't continue doing it. So yeah, does it make a difference? Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. So, but for yourself, how, what's your take on that? Like, I know you mentioned you meditate, right? And you know, what else do you do in terms of that?
I mean, I think when I heard you say like, I need to, again, it's become a goal. And sometimes, right, when it's
a goal,
then there's a pressure.
Everything to me is a goal.
Yeah. I mean, of course, that's great because then you can achieve whatever you set out to do. But at the same time, there's always 2 sides to the coin, right? Then you create a pressure like, I need to. But then if you don't understand why, and like you say, it doesn't work, then it just becomes something you say you will do, but you never do because you don't feel alignment with that. So in I guess in a nutshell, it's like every one of us finds our own pathway that keeps us happy. It's not a one size fit all, right? For me, for some people, they can meditate for 30 minutes. I can't, right? And some people can sit there and meditate for 30 minutes. I also cannot. So I like walking in mindful awareness, and I look around at the surroundings because I love nature. When I wake up in the morning, I take maybe 1 to 2 minutes just to do my deep breathing and focus on nothing but my breath. And that works for me. But if you ask me to lie down for 10 minutes in bed and just do the meditation, I might start to feel fidgety, right? So we have to find what works for us, right? And for me, another thing that works is, I like to cook and I like to bake. So during that time, it's because I can just put down everything on my mind because I have to concentrate. I have a knife in my hand, I got a stove on, right? If I don't focus, then I might get burnt. So in that sense, I can drop everything, and that allows me to be very present in the moment. So we find different things, and I think it changes with the season of life that we're in as well, right? Some people go for long runs. Ask me to go for a long run, I tell you, no, thank you. See? So, find your own happy, it doesn't always mean that it works for one person means it's going to work for you, but go in with an experimental mindset. It means test it. If it doesn't work, put it aside try something else, find something that works, and maybe 5 years time, one month time, I don't know, come back to it again and try it again in a different form. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but you keep testing until you find maybe 2 or 3 things that consistently work, then stick to them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway I take from that is no pressure. That's
Yeah,
very
no
important.
pressure, no pressure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then you are counter to the happiness, ma.
And yeah, and what are your thoughts on journaling? So this is something that everyone recommends, and they say, oh, journaling, but I really like, it's very hard for me to journal.
Journaling, I mean, I do journaling as well, but it's not like I do it every day. I only do it when I feel like my emotions or there's something that I'm trying to process, which is still going around my head for days or even months. I try not to leave it to months. So let's say I had an argument with my spouse, right? I mean, in every marriage, there's always arguments. And if it's lingering for like 3, 4 days, then I realize, hey, I need to write it out, right? It could be talking it out. Not everybody likes to write, right? And some people run it out. And so I write it out. And then when I see the words on the page, then I go, oh, it helps me to kind of make sense why I'm feeling a certain way. And then sometimes I'm so frustrated, right? I just want to get the emotion out. And actually, that's very healthy because when we can express our emotion, it means we are no longer keeping it suppressed inside of us. And healthy expression of emotion is very good for our happiness as well. Yeah, so next time you feel very pictured with someone, you don't keep inside about or anyone listening, don't keep for too many days because it starts to build up illness in your body, and that's a fact.
Oh my God. Yeah. So don't keep that resentment in the body. Oh my God.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you are grieving, you're feeling sad, it's okay to cry. It's okay to talk to someone, right? I think sometimes we feel like we need to show a happy face. We need to show like everything's well. But we are humans, some days are bad days. Some days are good days. Some days we feel on top of the world. Some days we just, don't feel like seeing anyone or to curl up under a blanket, right? So let's just be real. And I think when we're authentic to ourselves, we can be happy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that because I think the phrase that we use now is okay not to be okay. That's the current
Yeah.
phrase, and you don't have to be.
Yeah.
As the happiness scientist, the reason why I love the One FA interview was that you also say, oh, I also struggle with this. I also I'm having this. So I'm hearing that from a happiness expert. I was like, oh, happiness expert
Yeah.
also can have struggles. So okay, yeah. Then so fun fact, I was listening to yesterday and I wasn't having a very good day, but I was like, oh yeah, this is quite profound for me going through my day as well. So last thing,
Nice.
so thanks for taking the time. And last question, and then we can go, is I like what you said on the interview, is that you said something that is very profound, and maybe I would like you to expound here. Is that you said when you face challenges, very specific challenges, instead of asking why me, you said asking why not me. So I'm like, wow, that was very profound to me. I was going through a bad day yesterday, and I said, wow, that is a very different perspective in thinking about the challenges I face. And then you said, I thought maybe I'm the only person who could deal with this, and this is a very unique situation for myself. So yeah, like can you share more about what you mean by like why not me?
Yeah, actually, I got inspired, or I learned it from one of my friends who went through quite a devastating experience where she lost her daughter in a car crash. And for many days and months, maybe even years after that, she kept asking, why me, why me, why me? And she said that her suffering started to shift when she asked, why not me? She said, hey, I'm not the only one who has lost somebody. Suffering by a human being is universal. We all have moments where we suffer, whether we lost somebody, whether we failed, whether we did something stupid and berate ourselves. So why not me? If we ask why me, that means we are the only one and we feel so alone. But when we ask why not me, then we realize we're not the only ones. And why not me could also be like what I said on the interview. Why not me? Maybe I'm in the best position. Maybe I can manage this. It's not about it's not about faking it and saying like, puff yourself up and say that I can handle anything. But if we shift the question, then maybe we'll shift our perspective and our thoughts on it. So, I mean, recently I was going through quite a hard time as well, in the past few weeks. And I asked like, why not me? Then I realized, hey, around me, there were many people who had similar experiences. And because I started sharing what I was going through, then I realized, yeah, actually, I'm not that stupid after all. But the self-talk was like, am I the stupid person who made this awful decision? So I guess when you shift to why not me, and you realize you're not alone, then you can find commonality with others, right? That brings us back to relationships, isn't it?
Oh my God, that is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sha-En. That is
You're welcome.
one great, very profound advice there. So yeah, Sha-En, thank you so much for being on this podcast. So for the listeners, please follow Sha-En. She is very prolific on LinkedIn top voice, right? So Asia's top mental health advocate for 2021, 2 times TEDx speaker, happiness scientist. So follow her on LinkedIn. She has a newsletter as well on her LinkedIn that she published bi-weekly, the Happiness Scientist, Happiness Review newsletter. And she has a lot of content, very good content on happiness there. And yeah, do follow her and also follow her progression as well on LinkedIn. So thank you again,
Thank you
Shan,
so much, Bob. And thanks everyone for listening.